Don't trust the oddly familiar voices coming from the woods. This world is a strange one. The Goatman is back. This hoofed creature that stands on two legs has only the most sinister, evil things in store for its prey. And by prey, I mean those unlucky people who live a little too close to the woods. Whenever you feel eyes watching you when you're alone, close the windows. It might just be the Goatman. And if you feel the same sensation when you're outside, you better go back in fast. It's also not uncommon for this creature to mimic the voices of those you know, to lure you into its grasp. So get ready. Tonight I have 5 allegedly real encounters with the Goatman. But first, I want to shout out to Sarah R. for donating to our website. Thank you, you amazing person. Also, we're looking for true Christmas scary stories if you've got your own. You can submit your story, read 1,000 other stories, or watch hundreds of videos at darknessprevails.org. Thanks. And one more thing. I have a lot of people say I deserve more subscribers, and I appreciate that. Every view and every sub is hard fought, and lately my averages have been going down. But you can help. Please, if you believe in me and my channel, always share my videos everywhere you can. Thank you so much. Now, let's move on to those nightmares, shall we? Number 1. Goatman Encounter. Submitted by EMILIO G. This happened in East Texas during the summer of 1999. My cousin Allie, my sister Becca, and I used to play together in the woods during the summer as children. Our grandparents owned a ranch there, and our parents would drop us off for weeks on end. All the way up until I was 11, Allie was 8, and Becca was 12. We'd just run out into that great hot wilderness, playing imaginative games and terrorizing Grandpa's poor dog Daisy. The woods held all kinds of wonders for kids. Armadillo holes, abandoned cars, and a shallow, dirty creek, somewhere we were absolutely forbidden to cross. At night, Grandpa would sit and chew tobacco on the porch, and he would tell us stories, while Grandma cooked cornbread and black beans on a wood stove. Those summer nights took on a magical atmosphere, with the constant hum of cicadas filling the air and the smell of smoke. One night, Grandpa set us down on the porch, and spitting out his tobacco, he said, "When I was just your age, Jack and me built a treehouse out there on the other side of the creek. Of course, we called it Fort Deliverance. Had a lot of battles in that fort, kept the gnomes out of the ranch." We collectively rolled our eyes. Grandpa talked a lot about the gnomes. He said they lived in these woods and would play tricks on people. He said if you looked hard enough, you could see them out of the corner of your eye, darting back into the bushes. Of course, we grew up there. We'd been through every inch of the woods and hadn't once seen one. "There ain't no such thing as a gnome," Becca whined. Grandpa suddenly became very grave, and looking over his shoulder at Grandma, he whispered, "These woods make things true that ain't usually true. You believe in something hard enough, it'll come true, especially at night." Jack and me, we believed really hard in those gnomes. And with that, dinner was served. We didn't talk about the gnomes anymore. Later, when we were all trying to get to bed in the tiny bedroom reserved for the kids, Allie whispered, "I think I saw a gnome today." "Nuh-uh," I said. "That's just Grandpa's stories." "I don't know, I saw them." We proceeded to mock Allie for believing in the gnomes until we grew tired of it and fell asleep. The next day, the 3 of us went out to the woods as usual. I remember it distinctly. It was 97 degrees, and there was the acrid smell of suntan lotion and DEET liberally applied by Grandma as we ran off. Allie ran off into the woods, and Becca pulled me aside and whispered, "Let's fool her. She's so young she'll believe any story. So let's make one up, something scary." Giggling at the prospect of terrifying my little cousin, I agreed. We walked along the banks of the shallow brown creek, kicking stones into the water. That's when my sister decided to invent the Goatman, with an unsubtlety only achieved by children our age. "I went to Fort Deliverance last night," she went on in a sing-songy voice, "and I saw Mr. Goatman. He had a bottom half like a goat. He walked on hooves like this." She pantomimed a weird gait. "And he had the top half like an ugly old man with rotten teeth and big black eyes." "Yeah, I saw him too," I chimed in. "He told us to come down to his house, but we didn't go because Goatman eats children." Allie chucked a rock into the river. Did not. We were asleep in the same room. Well, I said, you were asleep. Not me. I saw the Goatman, and now he knows about us. Giddy with our newfound myth, Becca and I started prancing around like goats and regaling our cousin with tales about the Goatman. Didn't you know the Goatman made kids with catfish stew? Didn't you know the Goatman could speak to the animals and got them to spy on people? Didn't you know the Goatman lives underground and he could hear you when you walk? Our little made-up mythology wasn't exactly consistent, but over time it became clear that Allie, at least, was taking the bait. She was asking questions about him now. Does Goatman wear clothes? Well, of course, but only over his man parts. Does Goatman eat grass? No, only meat and bones. Where's Goatman's hiding hole? Why, in the tree beneath Fort Deliverance. We spent the whole day that day talking about Goatman, and after a while it became hard to deny his existence. At least that's the way it worked in our child's minds. I guess that's the way all superstitions must form, children playing question and answer games in the woods. On our way back home, I swore I saw something move in the corner of my eye. That night, none of us could sleep. I kept thinking about the Goatman breaking off a kid's arm and throwing it in a pot of catfish stew. Eventually, Allie whispered, I'm scared, guys. Goatman can't get us in here, can he? Becca whispered back darkly, I don't know. The wind hitting the windows was not wind, but the howling of the Goatman. The cicadas were spying on us that night, telling Goatman how to find us. I was so sure the Goatman was the shadow in the corner, watching us. Allie woke us up sobbing several times in the night, saying she wanted her mom. She kept saying that Goatman was watching through the window while we were sleeping. After the third time this happened, Becca admitted, Don't be scared anymore, it's annoying. I made up the Goatman, we made up the whole thing. But I saw him, she insisted. He was in the window. He has to be real. What do you want me to do? Becca asked, putting a pillow over her head. Just shut up about it, you're freaking me out. He's not real. Allie's sobs died down, and eventually we all went to bed. The next day, we had all but forgotten about the Goatman, and we stayed far away from those woods. Though I still couldn't help but make sideways glances at it, fearing at times that a tree branch was a backwards-facing goat leg. A week passed, and we started playing in the woods again. This time we were pretending to be Pokemon trainers, and all claiming that we had caught the best Pokemon in this or that tree. At some point we got the idea to try to find Fort Deliverance, which meant crossing the Forbidden Creek, leading up to a big oak tree with a decaying tree fort up top. That's where we found Goatman. We saw him wading through the water at the far end of the creek. He was looking down at the water intently. He walked with a strange gait. He was sunburnt all over his pale body, gray hair sprouting from his back. He had a spindly gray beard, beady black eyes, and a mouthful of crooked teeth. We didn't see his legs, but we were sure of what they were. We stood silent for a moment, too scared to move. Then Goatman lurched suddenly and grabbed something slimy out of the water. He let out a strange, otherworldly cackle as he pulled a catfish out of the creek by his mouth, and he tossed it to the shore. The three of us turned and ran. In the panic, Allie tripped on a tree branch and stumbled into a small ravine. She was screaming. When we turned to help her, we saw that she had impaled her small right foot on a sharp stone. She was bleeding with a twisted ankle. Sobbing, the three of us sat there. We had no idea what to do. Becca, without explanation, got up and ran as fast as she could away from the two of us, leaving Allie and I alone in the ravine. I still have nightmares about her bounding up the slope as I screamed for her to come back and help us. I tried to pick Allie up and get her to walk. Goatman came through the foliage at the top of the ravine, dripping with water and holding the catfish in his hand. I swore I saw his reversed hoofed feet. Allie closed her eyes. I was tempted to do the same, but then I remembered what Grandpa had said about believing in things. I don't believe in you, I screamed at Goatman over and over again. We made you up. You're not real. What in blazes are you kids doing? Grandpa said from behind me. Becca had gone to get him. You're gonna get yourself hurt bounding around like that. When I turned back toward the Goatman, he was gone. Grandpa came down into the ravine to help us. We were all crying our eyes out and blubbering about the Goatman. "That's all right, kids, I believe you," is all Grandpa would say to us. We never went back into those woods. For years, the three of us have told inconsistent stories about the events. Becca claims that there was never even a man in the water, that she was just playing along with it. Allie says it was probably just a local fishing for catfish. But me, I know it was the Goatman. I think I was the only one to see his legs. Grandpa died 2 months ago, and he put in his will the three of us. We got joint ownership of the deed to the property. Now that some of us have kids of our own on the way, we're thinking about turning it into a summer retreat, even though it's been largely abandoned for the past few years, with our grandparents' health failing. We're planning on going out there to clean things up next weekend. I think the Goatman has affected us all in different ways. For Becca, he's a sign of hysteria. Goatman is what happens when you have a group of impressionable people who all want to believe something really badly. Allie, on the other hand, has channeled her fear of the Goatman into religion. Satan is like her new Goatman, except she's not nearly as afraid of him. And as for me, every time I walk over a creek or river, I shiver a bit. Those woods have eyes, and they stare back at me. I know he's just a stupid myth that we made up, but that doesn't make him any less real. I'm planning on going out to Fort Deliverance and fixing it up this weekend. It will be my personal project. I think Grandpa would have wanted it. Hopefully then, I can put all this stuff to rest. Number 2. Strange Creature Stalking the Mountains. Submitted by ALEXANDERBASE. My name is Alexander, and at the time of this story, I was 18 years old, freshly graduated from high school. I was living in a relatively small town. Besides pubs and nightclubs, there wasn't much to do, but I really wanted to do something new and adventurous. It was a hot night in July. I was playing Far Cry at midnight when my phone rang. It was a very good friend of mine from high school who I will call Hunter. The two of us are night owls. It's not uncommon for us to call each other at such hours. We chatted for a bit, and then he invited me to spend some days at his cabin in the woods, 60 miles away from the city. Many of those we went to high school with were coming as well. It sounded interesting, so I instantly said hell yes. We were going to leave in 2 days, with his car and mine. I was super excited to spend some quality time in nature because I've never really been much of an outdoorsy person. So there were 8 of us, 5 in his car, which actually was an SUV, and 3 in mine. His cabin was pretty isolated from the world. We followed a gravel mountain road, and then there was a clearing where the cabin was. We unpacked our stuff, and of course, we had our fun right off the bat. The music was at high volume. We made some barbecue. We hiked on the mountain trails, and then we started drinking until we were all laughing at the most stupid things. So our first day was okay, no incident. But until the next evening, we somehow finished all of our food and drinks. So someone had to go 5 miles down the road to the nearest town and do some shopping. Well, I didn't really want to go. I just wanted to stay and relax. So Hunter took a few friends and left. So at the time, it was just me, Dan, Lisa, and Sarah. Dan was watching TV in the living room, and the girls were not feeling so good, so they were somewhere in a room upstairs. As for me, I was on the first floor balcony, just watching the woods around me, listening to music on my phone. It must have been 10 at night, and Hunter and the others hadn't come back yet. I was still chilling on the balcony, just watching my surroundings. I noticed it was a full moon, so it was not too dark outside. All of a sudden, I heard some rustling and twigs snapping in the distance. At first, I didn't really think much of it. There were so many animals wandering around those woods anyway. I was just feeling strange. My body was for some reason on full alert, and there was a sudden silence. It was that cliché feeling of being watched, but I tried my best to just brush it off. Eventually, I gave up and I wanted to go inside. I wanted to see what my friends were up to, but as I stood up from the chair, something in the distance caught my eye. I stood still and focused a little, and I could clearly see something peeking over a tree at least 30 feet in the distance. This thing was just peeking out for a few seconds, then it hid behind the tree and peeked out again, like it wanted to be as stealthy as possible. To be honest, it looked like a goat, maybe a mountain goat or something. The weird part is, though, that the head was very far off the ground, so either it was the tallest goat I've ever seen, or maybe he was standing on something behind the tree that I couldn't see. But that wasn't all. Something was off about the goat. Its eyes were red and yellowish and glowing, staring right at me from that distance. I was just staring back, not moving a muscle, even though I was safe at the balcony in case things went down. I think I was trying to figure out what the hell kind of animal that was, or if I was just imagining things. After 5 minutes of staring at the thing, it dashed under another tree, and I could see it more clearly now. This wasn't your average goat. It was skinny, extremely tall. Definitely at least 7 feet tall, looking like a human, but with a goat head. But somehow its hands were more dog-like. I was completely disturbed by what I was seeing, but at the same time curious. I ran inside at that moment. I grabbed Dan and a flashlight, and I wanted to show him this creature. But when I came back, the creature was gone. Frustrated, I scanned the tree line, looking in every direction to find the thing. Lucky enough, I saw it again, several meters away from where it was before. I saw it and pointed to it with the flashlight. It was closer now, this time standing on all 4 feet. "Holy crap, man, what is that?" Dan asked me. He sounded as spooked as I was. As he was talking to me, the creature made the most creepy growl I have ever heard in my life. It was like a cat being strangled, mixed with a wolf's howl and a demented screaming woman. I'm sorry, but this is the best way I can explain it. In the moment we heard it, we ran back inside and bursted into the girls' room. They were sleeping and were very angry for us entering so loud, but we didn't care because we were just looking out of the window to see if the thing was still there. It was now standing on 2 feet and looking straight at our window, making that creepy growling noise again. This time, the girls heard it too and asked who the hell was making that sound. And when they saw at the window the thing that was making that noise, they began to scream. We didn't know what to do. I wanted to call Hunter, but there was no signal in that area. Shortly after, we heard the car pulling in the driveway. They were back. They came inside with the food and drinks and were getting ready for the party. Of course, we told them what we saw and they did not believe us. I took Hunter out to the balcony to see if the thing may be around, which I very much doubted because if it had been around, Hunter and the rest would have seen it or heard it from the car as they were pulling in. He wanted to be the hero though after I told him, and he offered to take a flashlight and his gun to search around. He simply thought we saw a bear or something like that. 2 other guys went with him to search. Eventually, after about 10 minutes of patrolling around, they came back, and they were telling us that we were nuts and drank too much. So we all started drinking together, and eventually we forgot about everything that happened. Until 3 in the morning. There was me, Dan, Hunter being the last guy standing and drinking when Hunter said that he needed to take some things from the car. He went outside. After 3 minutes we heard him running and entering the door. He slammed it hard behind him. His face was pale white. He sounded very serious even in his drunken state. "Guys, tomorrow we're leaving. Just get some sleep and after you wake up pack your things." "What's going on?" me and Dan asked. "Okay, I saw it. Eyes glowing, very tall, just behind the car. It looked like it was waiting for me, and then I heard it growl." We remembered the episode from earlier, and we were pretty disturbed by it. I still don't know what I saw that day, be it a Goatman or Skinwalker or Wendigo or something. Doing some research on the internet, many creatures might match the description of the thing. Since then, we haven't been back, and we never talk about the experience. And Hunter even began to rent the cabin out to other people. I have no idea what we saw. Number 3. Goatman in Drama. Submitted by PM88. To begin this story, I want to note that I live in a very rural area in the Pacific Northwest, with lots of dense forest all around where my home is. This experience happened in late fall of 2016 at my high school, and it's really messed me up mentally, and I have no clue what to believe in anymore. I'm a new student at my school and just moved from the town over. I moved because I was having lots of issues at my old school with bullying, and I became very depressed over time. I just needed a fresh start. I loved my new school and the people that attended it. These folks were really down to earth, and I've already made very close friends for being there for the short time I have. I always tended to get to my school early in the mornings because I was that kind of person. Since my first class of the day was drama and theater, I would just walk in there, sit down, and chat with my teacher, Mr. W, or Wally. I wasn't really the social type in the mornings anyway. I liked peace and quiet. Let me add that our theater is huge. It's about 45 feet tall and 60 feet wide, maybe 80 to 90 feet long. It only has 2 exits and no windows. The 2 exits are the door you come into that is connected to the inside of the school. Everyone enters through that door, and I mean everyone, except for Mr. Woolley. He comes through the back door that is behind the stage. I will add that there is a large forest across from that door, and I do believe it's only for staff for safety reasons. I don't even know if they lock it or not, because it's sort of hidden away from the outside. It was this morning that changed everything, and I mean everything. As I said before, I got to school early because my mom had to commute to work early, so she just dropped me off at 6 in the morning. But that's how I like it. School started at 7:20. I had a long wait ahead of me, but it didn't bug me at all, really. So I walked into the theater, doing my regular routine, when I noticed something was very off. First, I will start with the cold. It was freezing in there, and it was never like that before. Then I noticed something else. It was pitch black dark in there. Let me state that Wally was always in the drama room at 5 in the morning, with the lights on and ready to teach. But it was just all wrong this morning, and it was out of character for him. I turned the lights on for the audience seats in the 3/4 of the theater, and they beamed on. But that wasn't all the lights. The stage lights would also have to be turned on backstage. As I walked toward the stage, I noticed the curtain was down for some reason. Now, the curtain was never down. So I kinda got creeped out. In situations that were out of order or scary, I would panic very fast. But then I heard movement and some kind of clanging noise at the top balcony of the theater. The balcony was behind the curtain, and the noise sounded like someone or something was pacing up there. But it was all wrong. It did not sound like regular human footsteps. It was like metal on metal or something. Something heavy against the metal floor of the balcony. It sounded like there was some sort of large animal up there, but there was no way an animal could climb up a freaking ladder. Then it just stopped. I slowly walked to the middle of the curtain and stopped and listened. I then heard the footsteps on the ground. This was freaky. How did whatever it was get down from the balcony to the floor so fast without being heard? I mean, this thing sounded heavy before, and then it made no noise to just simply get down. At this point, you're probably wondering why I didn't just run out of there. But I couldn't. I was both curious and frozen with fear. I was a statue. Then, as the steps began to go to the right, to the end of the curtain, I did something really stupid. I called out to it. "Wally? Is that you? Are you okay?" Big mistake. The footsteps stopped. Everything was dead silent. I called Wally's name again. Then I saw his head pop out from behind the curtain, with an odd smile on his face. I was both relieved and cautious. What was he doing back there in a dark room, messing around trying to scare people? Something was up, and this was totally out of character for him. "Wooly, what are you doing?" I said. "Are you on drugs or something?" I know I shouldn't have said that to my teacher, but I was both angry and scared. I was nervous. I wanted answers. As I started walking towards him, I noticed something else. It was just his head peeking out from the curtain. No arms, no legs or body, just his head. And it didn't look like him exactly. It looked like someone had copied and pasted a picture of his face while he was laughing. It was just messed up. "Wally, why aren't you talking?" I said like a little girl. "Are you okay?" He was still staring at me with a stupid smile. And finally he stuck out his hand and motioned me to come behind the curtain. And I could only stare in horror, and I couldn't even breathe, as I realized that those were not Wally's hands. Those were not human hands. They were covered in thick brown fur from the start of the forearm to as far as I could see up his arm. The hand was hairless and had dark gray skin, and the hand had sharp, long claws at the end of it. He looked at me straight in the eye and said with an old raspy voice that was not Wally's, "Come here, child. Come with me." And as he said this, his eyes turned a deep shade of red. And that's when I ran out of there so fast. Everything happened so quickly. When I ran, this freaking thing, I heard its footsteps heavy behind me. It chased me to the exit door of the theater. I could hear what sounded like hooves stomping on the floor. I did not dare look behind me, because that would just slow me down, and I was not getting caught by this thing, whatever it was. Then I heard the thing start to howl or cry or something. Either way, it was scary as hell. My heart was pounding. I have never been that scared in my entire life. Just as I was about to reach the door, the thing stopped, about 2 meters close. And that's when I turned to look at it. It was motionless, standing there. It stood several feet taller than me, and I could see that it was all covered in fur except for the hands, but I could not tell because it was still too dark. Then it started this creepy chant. It was chanting my freaking name. I had enough. I bolted out of the door to the safety of the office. And the moment I opened the door, I ran face first into Wally, the real Wally. I didn't know what to say. What even was that thing if Wally was right there? I just started to cry. I saw that he was confused too, so he just led me to the office. I sat down with Wally, the principal, and the vice principal, and a school cop. I explained everything to them and told them that it was still there. At first, everyone thought I was on drugs and looked at me very silly. Wally said that he was not there because he was late in a traffic jam, and that he woke up too late this morning. That sent shivers down my spine. I mean, how did that thing have Wally's face? During their little investigation, no one was allowed in the theater. I remained in the office with Wally, just talking about the incident. When the cop came back in, she looked very puzzled. I asked her what was wrong. She began to say that while investigating, the first things they noticed was a very nasty stench in there, not to mention it was oddly cold. They checked everywhere in there, and she said they found only one thing. She was hesitant at first to say anything about it, but then she finally gave in. She said that there were muddy footprints everywhere. They went all the way up to the metal balcony. I was even more terrified when she said the next part. She said that the footprints led to the open and unlocked back door outside and went into the woods. But the tracks just stopped shortly into those woods. Nobody at the school knew about this, and I was even told not to tell any of the other students. They didn't want anyone being scared. I've been going to counseling after this, and I am so scared this thing will end up at my house or something. I only live about a half a mile down the road. I have nightmares every night and cry more than usual now. I sleep with my door to my room locked and the blinds to my windows closed. I've heard stories about the Goatman long before this incident, but now I just wonder, was this some stupid prank? Or was it real? All I know for sure is that I'm transferring out of that class, and I'm never being that early to school again. What still baffles me, though, is how that thing knew my name. Number 4. In the Dark. Submitted by Spoony Girl 1. The story I'm about to tell you just happened recently. I don't know what it was, or if my mind was just playing tricks on me, but I'll never forget it. I'm 16 years old. I live in a small town in New York. There's a population of 3,000 people, but during the summer it's tourist season, so our little pound gets packed. I live about 2 miles from town in the country. There are houses up and down my road, but they are spaced pretty far from one another. We're surrounded by forest, which during the day is really nice to explore, but at night it takes on a very eerie tone. There aren't any streetlights on the road, so it's just pitch black, unless the moon is out or you're near a house with lights on. I've always been a sucker for scary stories, even though they always do scare me and make me very paranoid. Even before that, I was always scared of being outside at night, as I'm afraid of the dark and coyotes come pretty close. But what I saw the other night was no coyote. We have 4 dogs in our house. I just got a puppy, who we keep away from the other 2 most of the time. I have another older one and 2 big black dogs. One is a lab pit bull mix and the other is a German shepherd. The puppy is mine, so I always take her outside myself, but my dad or brother will usually take care of the other 3. My dad took the 3 dogs outside for their nightly walk. I was hanging out with my brother when my dad comes in and tells us that Molly, the German Shepherd, got away from him because he dropped her leash. Molly is my brother's dog, so he was pretty mad to hear the news. I put my pup on her leash while the boys put their headlamps on to look for her. I grabbed a high-power flashlight and stepped outside, where it was pitch black merely yards from the house. We kept calling for her, using whistling sounds. About a mile behind my house and my neighbors, there's a dense forest where she likes to run, to hunt and smell for deer. Between that space, there's a large field and a barn for cows and horses. My other neighbors have made 4-wheeler trails around the farm and back to the woods. If our dogs get out, they always like to run back there. But we still get nervous for them to be too near to the road, because people always speed down that road. Nobody would see her, especially since her fur was pitch black. I'm scared to be out at night, hearing all these scary stories about strange creatures lurking near their homes. So we're out there, and my dad and brother are walking towards the back forest, where there are 2 other houses they have to pass. Both have dogs, and we're on good terms, so they don't mind when we hike through their properties. I'm walking my little pup on our little road that stretches from the main one and goes to my neighbor's. I keep calling out for Molly, and I can still hear the boys calling for her too. My dog stops when we get further away from the house and towards a path with tall grass. I wasn't about to walk that at night, so I just shone my flashlight around. Then I heard rustling coming about 20 feet away from me. My dog starts to pull toward the noise, but I pull her back. I don't let her go any further from where we're standing. Then she begins to growl at the noise. I didn't think much of it. She's scared of strange noises unfamiliar to her. She will always bark at something, even if it's just my brother coming up the stairs. I forgot to mention that my mom is out of town. She would have had a cow if she knew that my dad lost one of the dogs at night, but I was still planning on telling her when she got home. I start walking in another direction when I hear a low growl. I think it's my dog, but she has turned around and whimpering to go home. I shone my flashlight in the direction where I heard it, because it could have been Molly growling at me. Her sight is going a bit, so I called out her name. It wasn't Molly. Eyes were shining against my flashlight's beam. It seemed as if whatever this thing was crouching down in the tall brush, like it was waiting to pounce. It growled again. I could tell this thing had dark grayish hair on it. It stood like a man, but it was certainly not human. My dog started to bark and I screamed as this thing slowly inched forward. I turned and ran, and I could hear somebody squishing in the mud behind me. It was heavy, and I ran as hard as I could. My house was only a few feet in front of me, but this thing suddenly stopped, and it turned in the opposite direction. I ran through the garage door and into the house. I locked all the doors except for the garage, because my brother and dad still had to come through it. They were still outside. I was scared for them, as they would probably be passing that thing. My heart was racing. I began to feel cold in my chest, which indicated to me that I was going to have a panic attack. I suffer severely from anxiety and I have other health issues, so running took a toll on me. I heard the garage door downstairs slam, and I ran to my room, my dog following behind me, but she simply thought I was playing with her. I locked the door to my bedroom and opened the door that connected to my bathroom and locked that too. I was shaking, so ready to cry. I heard footsteps down the hallway. I'm fearing for my life. I swear I almost pissed myself. I was so scared. But then it was my brother's voice that came from the other side of the door. "Hey, are you okay? We heard you scream. We found Molly. I guess she saw something and chased it." At that point, I could barely tell him that I was fine, that I was just really tired. I knew if I told him what happened, he wouldn't believe me. He believes in things that he can prove. That night, I did not get any sleep. My whole body was aching, and I kept the lights on. Whatever that thing was, I will never venture into those dense woods ever again. And number 5, I'll never go camping again. Submitted by Anonymous. I am a 13-year-old female. I live in Arizona, and I'm a Native American. I've never been one to think that Skinwalkers or the Goatman are real, until 1 week ago. We were going to go camping for the weekend, starting Friday night after school ended, to Sunday afternoon. We arrived at about 6 o'clock and it was very dark. My mom started a small fire and we got working on putting up our tents. That was done about 30 minutes later. We had our dinner, some s'mores, and went to bed. I woke up at about 10:30 at night. I knew because I was wearing a wristwatch. I needed to go pee, so I got out a flashlight and went to the woods. A few moments later, I was walking back to my tent, and I heard something scratching on what I assumed was wood. I stopped and looked around. There was nothing there. I jogged back to my tent and got in, and within a few moments after I got back inside, I heard the scratching again. It was closer now, way closer. After a minute or two, it went away, and I fell asleep about 15 minutes later. Eventually, I was awakened by a loud screech. It sounded like it was really close, like 20 feet away from us. I didn't even dare go out there with whatever that thing was. I turned on my flashlight in the tent, and I pointed to the walls of it. That was a mistake. Whatever it was attracted to the light, and it walked towards it. I saw its silhouette come into view. It was a very large figure. Everything about it seemed human at first. But that was until I noticed the fingers, because each one was long and they ended in very sharp points. I don't know if it was just the shadow, but the thing seemed extremely tall, way taller than any of us, easily taller than any person I've seen in real life. Its legs were not human either. They looked like they belonged to a goat or some animal with hooves. Not too long later, it began to scratch on my tent, creating holes in it. I saw a part of the tall figure. Its legs were, as I described before, very much goat-like. I did what anyone would do in this situation, and I screamed. The creature started to shrink. And a few moments later, it took on the form of a wolf. It walked on its back 2 legs, and it ran. I kid you not, it ran on its back legs. I was stunned. I had no idea what the hell just happened. I was very much awestruck by this figure and what it just did. I got out of my tent and ran right into my mom's. I told her what had happened. I said we needed to get the hell out of there, because some sort of shape-shifting creature had just torn open my tent. She didn't believe me at first, but I took her and I showed her my tent, and within 15 minutes, everyone was in the car and we got out of there. It was probably 3 in the morning when this happened, and we got home at about 5. Now, I'm not completely certain that this was a skinwalker or a goatman, but whatever it was, there's no way it was human. Let's just say that I'm never going camping again, at least not for a long, long time. America is so much larger than people realize. So much of it is still vast, endless forests. Dozens of thousands of people have gone missing in those woods. Who knows what happened to them, what they saw or heard before they were taken? But what would you do if you were hiking with a friend and you heard them calling you into the woods when you just saw them walking in the opposite direction? Good night. Be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. And don't forget to send us your Christmas story soon. Go to darknessprevails.org and save our website to your favorites. Thanks.